So today, I have a few interesting pieces of Sonic Frontiers news. Yes, Sonic Frontiers. The main one comes from one of Tails channel's newest members, Dakii.
You're not that guy.
He has a friend who played a short demo of the game and gave Dakii an interview with information about the upcoming 2022 Sonic game. Now, before anyone asks, he didn't provide proof, but Dakii says he's been right many times about things in the past, and he does have a lot of credibility behind him since he is backed by Tails channel. So we'll take a look and see how this stacks up to our previous Sonic Rangers leaks, and definitively come to a conclusion whether these are legit or not, while also figuring out what juicy new things we're going to be seeing in this game. So since there's a ton of Sonic Frontiers info to go over, let's just get right into it. Oh, also like and sub, because it's now needed so YouTube shows this news to more people.
How did the game start?
Demo starts with the title screen saying Sonic Rangers working title, with a beautiful panoramic view of the world in the background. Orchestral music playing, don't recognize the theme. You're given the choice between Japanese and English text.
So I don't have anything to add about this part in particular, since we don't know anything about the opening UI, and that's something minor that often changes right up to release. So I'll skip that to the next significant one, which is...
How far along do you think the game is?
Pretty far along, it's still got a lot of jank in it though. Next year is still not a certainty. So here you have the first bit of big information. Next year might not be when this game releases, even though it's stated for now that the game will release in 2022. So hopefully COVID doesn't mess anything up here. So hopefully this game will make it out in 2022. I believe it will, but you never know.
He says the game is pretty far along, but they're also not sure that it will make a 2022 release date because of the jank. You gotta hate that jank. I have a theory that we're going to see gameplay and there's going to be a Sonic Central early next year. Someone has been telling me they think there will be one in December, and while that would be ultra epic, since they haven't announced it yet, I imagine January. But who knows? I'm wondering if maybe they'll even show a new Sonic Movie 2 trailer at a Sonic Central. That is, if they don't randomly drop it soon, which I have a feeling they might show it at the Game Awards on December 9th. It would be perfect for the event, and Jeff would score a major W having that revealed at his show. By the way, I want to quickly talk about the name Sonic Frontiers. So Zippo was confirmed right, and they filed a trademark for Frontiers, but with Frontiers, if that is announced as the new name, then he will gain thousands of social credits. Meaning his leak from earlier in the year has much more validity, so that will definitely play a role when looking at these leaks. Since the only other leak Dakii sourced reference is the confirmed one from January that used the name Rangers and was a legit playtest.
How did the game look?
Stunning. It was on a high-end PC that was output to an LCD, but I was very much impressed. There is a problem, though. It's got Sonic 06 vibes, to be honest, as in, Sonic does not fit into the environment he's in at all. The enemies look straight out of Breath of the Wild and Dark Souls. It's rather jarring.
And this is exciting news to hear. It best be looking good. I'm over here excusing Sonic Colors Ultimate's Xbox 360 visuals because Sonic Team didn't make that and have been putting their effort into this big boy here. So if this game is announced looking like Balan Wonderland, there's gonna be some major issues. He says Sonic doesn't fit into the environment like in 06, but I don't know. If it's Breath of the Wild themed in Dark Souls like he says, that sounds very in his environment. I'd find it much weirder if he was walking around the streets of LA getting animal-styled fries at an In-N-Out or something.
So you guys can make whatever you want out of that. I believe Sonic has faced enemies like this in Sonic Unleashed, and as we go through this, I think you guys will find that Sonic Unleashed has been a big inspiration for this game. So maybe the nighttime enemies were an inspiration for Sonic Rangers enemies. I think that's kind of cool, but you guys can make what you want out of this.
He says Sonic Unleashed has been a big inspiration to this game, and from what I've covered up to now, I'd agree. Not specifically from the January leak, but from a different one where there was a mention of a Ghost Girl companion in this game, which, whether it's the same character or not, is still a similar theme to the Night of the Werehog short from Sonic Unleashed.
What can you buy in the tower/shop?
3 things: the aforementioned spin cycle, lightspeed dash, and the stomp attack. By the way, all of the UI tools were just Forces assets, so obviously a placeholder.
I'm gonna be honest with you here. This seems like a typical fan answer. The spin cycle, which is the only thing we know of the game from the confirmed leak. The light speed dash, so exactly what Sonic 06 had, and a stomp attack. If this is real, it'll be very cool. But it's just a different way of progressing, as opposed to finding them at a specific place in order, like in Sonic Adventure 2. If real, it's only a small demo, so there's certainly a lot more in the finished game, but I always like this style of gameplay variety. Having the same base gameplay, but a different mechanic for challenges added depending on the ability you equip. I think it's good for a Sonic game in general.
How are the enemies? They're doing pretty good. One has a kid.
While I thought the combat was overly simplified, I was actually very impressed with the enemy variety. There was a rock monster and a Lionel ripoff that I swear looked like it was ripped straight out of Breath of the Wild. The AI was also surprisingly well done. If you walk slowly around grass, enemies will have a harder time finding you. Bigger enemies will chase you around the environment.
So finally, we get a new little piece of info. The combat being overly simplified is again something from the confirmed January leak. But he mentions there being a big enemy variety, which is something I've been yearning years for. I'm so sick of homing attacking the same enemy over and over again. Plus, there being actually decent enemy AI is always welcome.
Level design!
I thought the level design for the platforming puzzles challenges to be decent, though very simple. No idea how much of this will be in the final game. Felt traditional in the Sonic sense. Apologies if that's vague.
So he goes into the level design, but mostly talks about the puzzles, saying they're of regular challenge and feel typical in Sonic fashion. And this is basically what the January leak has said as well, so not too much to add. Obviously, kids have to be able to beat them, so they're not going to require a physics degree, but will be a nice change to the pace of the gameplay. I like these type of puzzles if done well, but there's a very fine line to walk between being annoying and being a fun short distraction.
Did any of Sonic's dialogue stand out to you?
It was all flavor text except for one line. Sonic makes a note about the environment not feeling right, and he immediately believes Eggman has something to do with this, alluding to the cyberspace thing possibly being nothing but illusions.
This one is a little odd, and not because it's inconsistent, but rather it literally doesn't make sense. So, the playtester says Sonic mentions the environment doesn't feel right, and he thinks Eggman's up to it. Because let's be honest, that's a fair assumption at this point. But then somehow this ties together as the whole cyberspace thing being an illusion? I don't get that at all. But maybe there's some basis to this that we don't know? But for now, I don't see how this is connected, so I'm just gonna ignore that and move on for now, because TBH, I don't think some weird schizosonic coma theory.exe is going on here.
How was the combat?
Very simple, probably too simple. You said those 4chan posts call it button mashy, and that's an apt comment. I have a feeling it'll become more complex as you get more moves/upgrades, but in the present demo, you could spam the homing attack, but Sonic could use a flurry of punches and kicks. Finishers on bigger enemies had a slow motion effect a la Breath of the Wild.
Now, the playtester again references the January leak, calling it button mashy, which is definitely a little sus that they keep mentioning it, but we'll move past that for now. So he keeps saying it's very simple, maybe too simple, but he also says Sonic has a variety of punches and kicks, which is more than Sonic generally has. Then also finishers. And when I hear this sounds far more intricate than any 3D Sonic game we've had to date. I will admit that I do love chaining homing attacks together to maneuver while taking out a room of enemies. But assuming this is comparable is an alternative playstyle, I'm super curious how they flesh this out.
Do you know how long this game has been in development?
There's been talk about this being in the planning since spring of 2017. There were tests being done around that time to see how a traditional 3D Sonic game would work in the modern era. Sega of America was talking to Epic about using Unreal. Not sure if those talks went anywhere or not. I'm not 100% certain, but 4.5 years sounds correct to me.
Now, I'm going to call a little cap, because while this is all interesting information, am I really supposed to suspend enough belief that some guy who played what was referred to as just a short demo knows the entire development history and engine changes it had? But okay, let's go along with it. Number one rule of improv, yes and. So 4 years of development, that seems about right. Maybe a little longer, but I'm not gonna pretend like I'm some game development master when I live at a dumpster outside of a Denny's.
How did Sonic look?
This is probably the best he's looked in about a decade. I almost thought they threw the Unleashed model in there for a second. It definitely isn't his Forces model. I played that garbage many times throughout its development, and this was much more in line with older games. He animated well, he has plenty of his usual idle animations, and he's got the usual modern edge you'd expect. The CG trailer is an accurate representation of how he will look. The Switch version, no idea.
So apparently his model looks much older, which is a good thing. So close to the Unleashed model that he said he mistook it for that. Which I find interesting because I actually got the opposite. From the 2022 teaser, you can see his leg fully extended and it looks rather short. I assumed this was alluding to them going with a more adventure-styled Sonic, hence his feet curving. While I do think Unleashed will have a big influence on this game, as it nailed a lot of 3D Sonic mechanics in a perfect way, I do think Sonic's model will be closer to adventure, since he even says the trailer was an accurate representation. But we'll have to just wait for that one. Next, DLC!
One thing I would tell your readers is that developers are turning to long-term DLC plans in order to get back on some costs on these very expensive games. I'd be stunned if there isn't an expansion pack or season pass announced soon after or even before the game launches.
So, the playtester who played a short demo goes over how the developers will price out their DLC long-term, because yes and. So I could see them doing more microtransactions, especially cosmetics. But I'm not so sure about a season pass. Those are generally for more competitive multiplayer type games, and I don't see Sonic Frontiers really fitting into that mold. A big story DLC has never really been done before in Sonic, with like a legitimate campaign and not some tacked on levels. So if this is the route they take, I'd be interested in seeing that.
Were there any interesting lines that stuck out to you?
Besides the one of Sonic being suspicious of Eggman, nothing else. Tails is mentioned in passing, but there was nothing interesting. And again, we'll go on to talk about the release year. Given what I know of this project, COVID or not, there's no way that this game was going to make it out this year. The initial version of this demo was going around as early as autumn of 2019. Open world games require much more testing because of how much more can go wrong in the game's large scope. Releasing at the state it's in now would have been a bad idea, full stop. Aaron's comments from a year ago make it sound like it was closer than it actually was. They still have a ways to go until this thing is ready.
We've known since early 2020 that it was not looking like anything would come out this year, and at the very end, at the earliest. Especially with Origins and Colors Ultimate planned, it wouldn't even make sense to get Frontiers out 2021, even if it was finished. It simply wouldn't give the other two projects enough time to breathe. He says the initial demo was going around late 2019, which, if this was true, you think there would be at least one other report of it then. The first confirmed playtest was January 2021, and there were a few other claims from around that time that add up. However, since the other ones didn't use the name Rangers like the main one, we can't be certain if they're legit. But yeah, I don't know why they would put out a focus test of gameplay in 2019 if it was that rough. Those are done internally to get to the point where you can play the game itself, which is why they're only now testing externally this year. You get a rough feel of the game's control, but with early and placeholder graphics. This source has knowledge of demos from 2019 to 2021, which definitely sounds out of the league of a regular playtester if you ask me. Especially since they don't have like the same people coming back and forth for playtests. But I want to give the benefit of the doubt and assume it all makes sense. Because I'm totally open to the possibility that I'm wrong and this turns out to be real. Because hey, even Zippo turned out to be right about the name, so weirder has happened.
Is there another game you could compare Rangers to, now Frontiers, that isn't Breath of the Wild?
Breath of the Wild and Dark Souls, straight out of Breath of the Wild. I love Breath of the Wild, Breath of the Wild, Breath of the Wild, or Skyrim's world. There's a Breath of the Wild moment.
Breath of the Wild has become the Dark Souls of open world games. Every single open world game now has Breath of the Wild mechanics, with Breath of the Wild environments and Breath of the Wild progression. This is not a good way to describe anything. It's like the Dark Souls of Sonic games. Stop! This is something people can't help but do, but please, get help and stop.
Good question. In terms of platformers, I would say two interesting games that it's strikingly similar to are the levels of Banjo and Kazooie and, interestingly enough, Sonic Jam Sonic World. In those, just like Rangers, you're given a multitude of tasks to do in order to get to the next thing you need to progress. It's actually something I thought about last night, not sure if the inspiration is intentional or not.
These are all things I like to hear. He says Banjo and Kazooie, which makes the sirens in my collectathon brain go wild. If there's a massive world with a bajillion collectibles that are fun to get and filled all over the world, I will have an absolute meltdown of joy. Games like Jak and Daxter and Ty the Tasmanian Tiger defined my youth. And while it's by far my favorite genre of game, it's a genre that's disappeared from the AAA space and is only kept alive by indies. But we are on the verge of a full-scale revival with Crash and Spyro coming back and performing astronomically well. And this mechanic is something that would be literally perfect for an open-world Sonic game. And it will be a massive shame and a hit to replayability if this isn't implemented in some way.
How big do you think the world map is?
Huge, gigantic, cannot understate that. I got a tiny glimpse of the map for a moment, but what we saw was definitely just a small cut of that area. I wasn't able to find out or run out to a point to see if there were any other biomes, but I doubt you'll be in the same place throughout the entire game. Size-wise, given that Sonic's movement is obviously much more quicker than, say, Link or Gerald, I'd say it's going to be the size of Breath of the Wild or Skyrim's world at the very least. Again, the budget on a game like this is astronomical.
So, he says he got a tiny glimpse of the map for a moment, despite knowing the entire development cycle the game's gone through, choices specific team members made, and a range of demos from 2019 to 2021. But, they just got a glimpse of the map. And a glimpse it was, because he states it was massive, which I know what you're thinking, and no, that's not something she has ever said to me. He says he's not sure if there are other biomes, but I wish he described the biome they were in, because we don't have any idea of any settings outside of the little forest area in the teaser. And we don't even know if that's a landscape in the actual game.
And the source goes on to say, oh, and yes, there's a Breath of the Wild moment that's becoming a trend with games like Horizon, Ghost of Tsushima, and others. There's a cliff area where Sonic can stand there and look over the surrounding area. It was beautiful.
However, again, he says a Breath of the Wild moment. I'm going to do something seriously regrettable if this doesn't stop. Please stop calling the Assassin's Creed perch thing Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild did not invent every game mechanic ever.
Then we asked about the renders.
And I'm gonna skip past the renders in Ultra Instinct Sonic because there's not much to add, and they seem insignificant either way. So let's get to the last 3 questions. These are the big bangers. The Bang Boys. The Bang Bros.
Wisps in Sonic Frontier!
There were no wisps inside. You got boost energy by collecting rings, and if you ever run out of any, the Ghost Lady would give you more and yell Sonic-ku, which, you know, I'm assuming this playtester played the game in Japanese or maybe in English, but the Ghost Lady didn't have an American voice actress yet, so she just yelled Sonic in Japanese.
Why are you guys shocked? Well, they'll still stay in the universe. They obviously aren't going to carry over previous games' gimmicks into each new title. That's just bad game design. And at the end of the day, this is a video game. This isn't some Wattpad fanfiction where that would be much more appropriate. So yeah, no wisps. Makes sense to me. Also, if you run out of rings, the Ghost Lady will give you some. Seems neat. Ghost Mommy, please give me rings.
How did it control?
As for controls, and I'm surprised you didn't ask this sooner, but this is why I'm fairly certain very little of Force's DNA is in this game. It doesn't feel anything like that at all. Force is controlled like total garbage, and I made sure to tell them that. He felt really good to control. The boost air control seems like something they've done away with, and it makes sense as to why. The way Sonic functions is something like, say, Unleashed, is not something that would work in an explorative open world game. You'd need full 360-degree control of Sonic, and that's what they've given him here. I wouldn't say it's Adventure, because I honestly can't remember the last time I played it, but it's definitely not Lost World either. I would put it somewhere in between those. I noticed that Sonic would pick up speed slightly going downhill, but I need to play again to check it again. He acted appropriately to terrain that I remember, because there are challenges where you ran on walls. Can't compare how fast he was to previous games, but he seemed the same speed in the Cyberspace Levels.
The game feels great to control, which is a nice update since January said it was a bit stiff. It sounds all good and dandy, so not too much to add. Sounds balanced between boost with high speed and adventure with movability. Now, the playtester writes that Sonic seemed the same speed in the cyberspace levels, but from what I've gotten and what he says, it seems the cyberspace levels are more boost themed. So I imagine he would be moving faster there since there's far less maneuverability, but maybe he's talking about how it handled and felt, which ideally they would have a similar feel and excitement.
Firstly, what you saw in the CG trailer was accurate. Once you find a cyberspace level, Sonic begins to glow with some sort of energy and he's warped in. It's like jacking into cyberspace a la Rockman EXE. I only had time to get 2 of them, but I came away very impressed. They're the typical boost level stages. First was just your typical Green Hill clone, music was absolutely fitting of a first stage, grind rails and trick ramps throughout. Second was a factory stage, guessing chemical plant was the inspiration. Loved both of them. This part is me just rambling, but looking at the loading screen, it seems to imply these stages may be some sort of digital recreation. Getting an S rank awarded you a Chaos Emerald, was only able to get 1. The levels may just be simulations, that's the word I was looking for.
And it seems cyberspace is where we're going to be seeing these previous zones appear, which they had to do somehow. It actually makes the open world more intriguing, because if it's not set pieces from Sonic's past, I'm excited to see what new areas will make up the open world. Previously, I imagined it like a Fortnite map, with the Green Hill section and like the Oil Ocean section, but it appears they're saving the nostalgia pandering for the cyberspace levels only, and I think that's a good thing. But since new and change is scary for a lot of people, I could see some people disappointed by an original open world. But what do you think of these leaks? Are you excited? Do you think it's real? Personally, I don't think this new one is real at all. It basically relies off of the information from the other leak, which if this was legit, they would put out their own unique observations, and the things added were obvious fan requests and things that have been done before, so I think it's all cap. But only time will tell, and I'm open to being wrong. Regardless of the fact that in my entire 23 years of life, I've never been wrong so far. However, we are in a Sonic news drought, so regardless, shout out Dakii, that guy, for giving the community something to collectively leech off of. Thank you, Dakii. We're all so desperate for content. Just thank you. Whoa. Now you might have heard that, and that was my phone, because I just got a text from a playtester who played a demo of the game. I trust him because he's been right about many things before, right in front of my very eyes, which wouldn't even make sense on the fact that he's a playtester and not an internal leaker. But alas, I believe him. If you guys don't, I totally understand, but I believe him, and he says the game is actually going to have Jun Sonoy on the soundtrack. You heard it here first, folks. He also said Sonic will homing attack, so I'd like that on the record as well. And drop a comment if you want to see a full video of all the juicy details my own source told me on Sonic Frontiers, because it's wild. And I'll make sure I put a spoiler warning on it if I ever talk about it, but the twist, wow, you guys aren't ready. I'm gonna start posting screenshots and clips of Sonic Frontiers in my Discord, which is linked in the description. It's actually the largest Discord ever to only have a single channel, so don't feel intimidated wondering where to post your theory that Sonic is actually Pac-Man who fell into toxic waste. Also, like the video. I know you like it, so show me it by hitting the thumbs up and subscribing with bell on, all notifications, because you want the realest news from a real raccoon, which I am. Lots of love. Peace.
When I'm with you, it feels like a dream.